I swear I filmed this like a week ago, and this was before the earnings, before what Elon said, right? And specifically now that he says, I recommend anyone who doesn't believe Tesla will sell vehicle autonomy should not hold Tesla stuff. This is like super relevant to this entire video of why I just think ROBOTAXI is stupid, but I guess I'll explain my reasoning in this video. It's just, I don't know, the new ER just does not make me, it doesn't rub me the right way. So I just read an article that really annoyed me. Right, here it is. Kathy Wood says Tesla can shoot up 10 times due to ROBOTAXIs. That's amazing, a 10x, wow. And ROBOTAXI's coming in October, or at least like no news of it. It's coming. She literally just sold. She just sold Tesla. Like, if you thought a 10x could happen because of ROBOTAXI, would you sell at, okay, I guess it's above market now, but like she sold like a week or two ago? Like, just, dude, this is crazy. Okay, so I just want to make some arguments, or just my thoughts on like full self-driving, on ROBOTAXI, on like autonomous vehicles, right? I don't think it's going to happen, and if it does happen, it will not be called full self-driving. It will be some form of like assisted driving, or like basically it's not going to be full autonomous self-driving, is my opinion. And just, there's too many things that are going against it, and I just want, like, this is just straight up annoying. Like, she literally just sold Tesla. What is she talking about? So I have a few arguments that I don't know, maybe I'm thinking about this wrong, right? So like, if you disagree with any of my points, please let me know, because I just feel there's so many companies that are like currently just working so hard on full self-driving. Is this on? Okay, yeah, on full self-driving, like Waymo, right? Tesla, Aurora, right? There's a bunch of companies that are just like working so much. All the car companies are basically doing full self-driving, and I think that there's a lot of problems with specifically investing right now, right, when it's kind of just all hype. So I'd say the first, so I'm just gonna list it out, right, my arguments, and please like let me know where I'm wrong. I would really like to be proved wrong. I would like to learn more, right? But this is just like me as like not like no I'm not an expert or anything, but like just thinking about it like just through common sense and just like writing out my thoughts. I just don't see a reason to invest in something for ROBOTAXI or for autonomous driving, just because there's too many. It just reeks of like, this ain't gonna happen. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. So the first thing, I believe that full self-driving, and just like this idea of full self-driving, there's first movers disadvantage. Like, usually first movers advantage is good, right? Like, you have basically you're exposed to the marketplace first. You're exposed to like you get the most customers first, right? And then when others join, then maybe that customer base will slowly like diminish and like even out, but then you'll still usually hold the majority. But think about all the problems with doing first full self-driving first, right? So one, you're working with basically weaker technology in training, right? Because there's a lot of training that occurs. You need a lot of data, right? So when you're the pioneer in this field, first of all, you're lacking data. You're lacking more like better processing power, right? For example, like just talking about Blackwell versus their previous chips, right? I forgot what Jensen Huang said about Blackwell, but he said it was like a bajillion times faster or something like that. Like, as technology advances, yeah, you might have be the first person to have a nice model, but maybe in the time it took you to train that model, that like perfect model, someone else did it in 5 years, or in like a year and a half. Someone did that in like half the time, a quarter of the time, a tenth of the time, right? Like, you're allocating like a lot more resources, like time, money, energy, right? You're allocating a lot more resources than someone else that's creating the same product in 5 years, 2 years, even 1 year, right? Like, for example, again, using the Blackwell chips, right? With that just has much better processing power. And you could say that even though it's more expensive, yeah, technically it's more expensive, but you save on so much more. Like, first of all, that one chip can maybe replace like 10 chips or 100 chips, right? Secondly, like, time is also money, right? So, and also, like, with full self-driving, there is an end result, right? There is technically a like a destination, right? Full self-driving. There's not really much you can improve on full self-driving after you reach full self-driving, right? So basically, like, your first mover advantage, right? Yeah, you have that, but like, how long can you capitalize on that market until other people reach that same destination, right? It's not something where you can just I just think that full self-driving isn't something that you can, like, even if you have an initial lead, you can't maintain that gap, right? Because eventually people will be like, oh, okay, that company has it too, and then maybe you'll be skeptical to use it first. Maybe it's like, oh, if Mercedes-Benz has their own FSD, you'll first be skeptical. You'll be like, oh, I mean, I trust Tesla because they have it longer, right? They've had it for a longer period of time, right? But as more and more anecdotes, as more and more people start using it and testing it, then they'll realize that eventually they'll be like similar in quality, and then it's just a race to the bottom, right? Whoever can offer the cheapest full self-driving, right? Then you no longer have any edge, and then, like, you're just like, there's no point in it, like, there's nothing else, right? Then you have to look for another opportunity for growth, which is another gamble, right? So I just don't see how like investing in full self-driving just because investing in a company that's investing in full self-driving, I just don't see what the point in doing that is, because that first mover's advantage is, in my opinion, more of a disadvantage than an advantage. Next thing, legal problems. Like, think about how sue happy America is. The legal liabilities just make any gain, any profit that you make from full self-driving just almost obsolete, right? So let's say you have ROBOTAXI, right? You start a taxi business, right? An autonomous taxi business using your supposed, like, perfect full self-driving, right? Let's say after all the overhead is deducted, after like your input costs, your output, whatever, right? You earned a total of $20. Now let's say you get into a crash. I don't know, like one out of 1,000 drives, or like we'll say 1 out of 10,000 drives, right? And then out of those 1 in 10,000, right, you win, we'll say 70% of the cases, so you only lose 30% of the cases. In those 30% of the cases, you have to pay for the medical fees of the person that you hit, and maybe also possibly like the medical fees of the person inside your car, right? Because obviously that's not at the fault of the owner of the driver, because it's fully autonomous, right? You can't blame a passenger. You have to pay for the legal fees, right? I'm not even doing the math, but like that's like almost obvious how skewed that is towards just like no one wanting to implement that, right? No one wants to be labeled no one wants to call it full self-driving because everyone knows it's trash, right? No one wants to call it full self-driving because they want to cover their asses, right? They want to CYA. Aside from just like monetary things, right? You also have to think about the marketing fees, right? Like, basically any goodwill that you have for your product, right, kind of just dissipates after every single crash. And like, if this crash happens, like, let's say like once every 6 months, right, once every year, technically that, like, the ratio isn't that bad. But like, just think about how many times every time that Teslas get recalled, right? The recall isn't even that bad, but still, regardless of how severe the problem is, it's still really negative press, right? And people will be like, okay, well, I mean, that happened once to that company. Maybe I should look at other companies' full self-driving, right? And then you lose customers again, right? You split the pie even more, right? So, like, legal problems, monetary problems, just the risk reward just isn't there. Next thing is this idea that you can even integrate full self-driving into society is really difficult, especially when you have to integrate it with multiple different models, right? So let's say you had 2 different models, right? And they both created a viable full self-driving model, right? Isn't it possible that those models, even though they're accurate, even though they work, they don't work together, right? So let's say in model A, it says if you see a car coming in, then you turn right, to avoid the car. Then the other model, it says if you see a car coming in, then you turn left. In that case, then both the models are kind of conflicting, right? Because in that scenario, then both cars would still crash, even though they're both actively trying to avoid one another, right? Like, you would I think that in order for full self-driving to work, you would have to have only one full self-driving company or only one full self-driving model. And you would have to have some type of like global, like peer-to-peer communication between different cars that have full self-driving to have like a relatively global knowledge, or at least like some relative knowledge of the or some relatively accurate knowledge of all the cars around you and all the surroundings. And that's only for the cars, right? Like you can't, there's no way you can account for like the humans nearby, the animals nearby, right? Even like wildlife or like any of that stuff, you can't really account for that. So this is just for like in like the perfect scenario when there's only cars on the road, there's only cars everywhere else, right? Everything is autonomous. Even then, it still might be difficult for basically FSD not to be commoditized, right? To the point where it's owned by only one specific, like probably subsidized by the government, and like it just doesn't make sense. And that also brings me to the point where when there are still humans, when there are still non-autonomous vehicles on the road, right? How do you integrate autonomous vehicles into the road or into driving? It's just hard, right? Because the car basically, the problem with full self-driving, right, and models in general is they're pattern recognition. They're inferences, right? So the thing is, do you every time you drive, do you expect to be in a car crash? You don't, right? You usually think, okay, I'm probably not going to be in a car crash. Right? But then you're able to quickly adapt when there is a car crash. And like when something out of the ordinary does happen, right? And that kind of brings me to my next point, right? So full self-driving, right? It's based off of patterns. It's based off of all the data that's been trained on, right? And then it calculates what to do based off that data, based off of basically an equation that it remembers based off of the data that's trained on what to do next. So that basically means that all of the decisions that car makes, that full self-driving model makes, is inference based, right? It has to calculate what to do next before it does it, right? And when you're driving, you don't, like, there are things that happen that you have to account for, right? You don't assume a black swan event will occur, but then they do happen, and then that's where your instinct comes into play, right? Like you're driving, and then you see something flash before your eyes, you instantly brake or you instantly turn, right? Like that's an instinct that I don't think models will be able to ever obtain, because that's like your brain's not thinking at that point. Your brain is just saying, I need to not die. I need to get the fuck out of here, right? Whereas a full self-driving model, they can't do that. They're all inference based. In both cases, right, no one's expecting the opposing driver to be crazy, but when there is a crazy batshit person on the opposing side, right, your body, you don't have to know how to react, you just react, right? Whereas, again, the model doesn't react, it looks, it calculates, and then it chooses a decision based off that calculation. And I guess the last thing for just autonomous driving, autonomous vehicles, ROBOTAXI, right, this is more specifically for ROBOTAXIs, but like, people are disgusting. Like, think about what people do in public bathrooms when no one's looking. That's what they're going to be doing with their car. Would anyone want to rent out their car for a measly, $5 a day, I'm assuming, because of how many cars there will be out and about, right? Like no one's, that's also a really big risk reward rate. Like that's a really bad risk reward ratio for the person that's lending out that car. It just doesn't make sense why anyone would do so. Like, it's just disgusting. Like there's so many things that people might do, and like even now, right, you could say, oh well, there'll just be security cameras in the car, right, monitoring everything, right? Like you don't know what people are doing. They could be sitting down, they could use they could use like a knife or something, they can be behind a chair, right? There's so many things that people can do to kind of avoid that. And it's just think about like how inconsiderate a lot of people are. And yeah, you could be like, well, majority of people aren't that crazy, right? But like the select few that are, it just ruins it for everyone, right? Even the possibility that might happen, right? There's gonna be some freak case, and then no one's gonna lease out their Tesla or lease out their car for RoboTaxi or for basically some type of taxi service, because people are scared, right? Like it's the same thing as like after 9/11, right? No one wanted to go on airplanes, even though that happened once for the first time in forever, right? People will just be extra scared. So I guess those are just some points, just me rambling about like why I don't really see how FSD is going to be that big of a thing, and how like I feel like investing in FSD or investing in companies that are working really diligently towards FSD, just it's a race to the bottom, and it just doesn't really make sense to me risk reward wise why those companies will want to even implement something that's actually full FSD versus something that's like assisted self-driving or like partial self-driving, right? Those are just my thoughts. I don't know, but yeah, I don't know if you have any ideas, right? I know there's a lot of Tesla bulls that are probably going to be against this. I just don't see it, right? I mean, you can talk about other stuff. I can't think of anything right now, but it's just a really bad thesis to think on. And like, especially what really annoyed me is just she literally sold like a week ago. Like, if you thought that because of ROBOTAXI Tesla could shoot up 10x, would you sell? Like, and think about, I don't know, think about also Tesla, right? Think about Elon, like how many times he's kind of just rug pulled people. Think about all his debt obligations. Think about, like, I don't know. Just maybe I'm just being skeptical. Maybe I'm just being like overly pessimistic. But I just don't really like full self-driving. I don't see how it can be incorporated into general use. I don't see like the risk reward ratio. I just don't see companies actually offering it. And then for either the companies or the people that are leasing out their cars, even if they do create it, right? But yeah, those are my thoughts. Have a good one.